Hi, everyone. Barb Green, Centerburg Local Schools. Hey, and you know that little third time's a charm, Ron? You know that little saying? I think we're going on number 5 right now, but I think this one's going to be perfect now. This take will be perfect.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We had some good things going there, but, definitely not everything the right way. I'm Ron Rogers with OCALI. And if you've never joined Barb and I, we're a lot of fun, actually. Just ask either one of us. And maybe some of our viewers would agree. However, we do really try to touch upon educational things like universal design for learning and all different things in education. And today is going to be it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think when you leave today's, you're going to really be excited about some new things that you might be able to implement. So with that said, Barb, have you ever been at a training where you've taken notes?
Yes, lots of times, Ron. I have to take notes. It's the way I get the ideas down on paper. But you know what? I usually type or write my notes in words. Is that what you do?
So you mean when you say you type or write, you mean you type in a laptop?
Yeah.
And then when you say you write, what do you mean by writing?
Sometimes I just have a notepad with my pen and I just make but I'm always a word-based note taker.
Word-based note taker. Okay. So now here's the big question, and this is the quandary. Okay. This is the one thing people need to ask themselves. How often do you go back to those notes and really look at them again? Because I've noticed when you take notes, you take very thorough, outstanding notes, by the way.
Well, that's a great question, Ron, because you're right. Like I probably don't go back and look at them real often, but I think the process of doing that helps get things in my brain and helps it stick. So you're right. I might not go back and look at them very often, but I think that process just helps me.
Okay. So would you say which way helps you the most? By typing the notes helps get it in your head, or by writing the notes physically?
By writing them physically, but I can't, if it is a packed session with persons really talking a lot, I can type faster than I can write. Oh. And so it kind of depends on the situation. Context matters, right, Ron? And UDL language. So what about you? How do you do it?
Well, you know what? A few years ago, I came up with a different way of taking notes, because unlike you, even if I took word for word notes, they were never very good. They didn't help me later when I'd go back. I either couldn't read my writing, or if I typed it, I didn't understand. I lost the whole concept of what was going on. So for me, I needed to come up with a different way. So I was thinking about the universal design for learning framework and how, like representation. How can I represent notes so I can think about what's being said and get it in my head? So what I started to do was what they call sketchnoting. I started drawing little symbols and pictures, and now I'm more into cartoon type of things. And I pull the concept that they're talking about, and I'll write it down, and then kind of put something of a drawing like with it. For example, if it's got something to do with time, I might draw a little clock. I usually put 3 o'clock on it, or 2 o'clock or something, to remind me that this is something that's time based. Or I might draw something like a windmill, or a school building, or an iPad or an iPod if it's technology. And just something to help me ingrain that in my head, because, I don't know that I always go back and look at my notes, but I do if I do the sketch drawings. I do, because I remember it through the drawing, and then sometimes I go back and look it up. So you can go on the internet, Barb, and look anywhere and find sketchnoting, and it gives you all kinds of ideas.
Well, I do know that when you have sat in trainings, and you and I have been in the same training, and I'm taking my notes, I will almost always ask you, can I get a copy of your sketch notes? Because it adds another kind of dimension to helping remember. And did you naturally, are you a good artist? Because that's what's scary to me about sketch notes is I'm not a drawer, if that's a word.
That's a great question, Barb. And no, however, this is what happened. I couldn't draw a stick figure until my daughter got old enough to start drawing. And she asked me if I would draw with her when she was just a little teeny girl. So her and I would spend hours drawing together. And Ella she showed me basically how to draw. And it began with just little things, and it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And for her, she's become what I would consider a pretty nice artist.
Yes.
For me, I've become someone that has learned to take notes really well with little drawings that she's taught me kind of how to do. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I'd kind of forgotten there for a few minutes what did get me involved in that. And it was her wanting to draw and me wanting to be able to practice, even when I wasn't with her. So the sketchnotings started to happen. And then there's a new whole realm to it now, though, Barb, I got to tell you about. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay. When you think about universal design for learning, you think about all these different ways that you might do sketch notes. Well, you also, start to think about how the mind works. And, so some people call it mind mapping. Okay. So somebody can go out and they can Google mind mapping and they'll find some information on mind mapping. Now, do I do it like the folks say you should mind map? Probably not. I've made it to work for me. Because, with universal design for learning, it's all about flexibility and expert learner. So, for example, when I mind map, I might mind map, for example, I got to have my other hand. I might mind map with like putting something in the center. And then for each different piece, I'll make like a little, just a little curve or something and put those ideas on there. But I don't stop there. I also will take and make little figures of something to represent those. And I'll keep that whole arm one color. And then, maybe come off the other side with something. And you can do that for so many different things. And then when you think about that one in the center, all the others come right to mind. I don't know if it's because it takes a few minutes to draw the colors and put the pieces in and then draw the little sketches. I don't know. But it works really neat. And some of the things you got to think about too is, you want different colored pens. Or different types of markers, which I don't have any markers that I can pull up right this second. But my favorite markers are the ones that you can feel. They're 3-dimensional. Mm-hmm. So when you sketch note and stuff, you can kind of feel what you've done too. Of course, these aren't, but sometimes I just like regular pens. Now, some people like erasable pens, especially if they're sketch noting in their calendar book, which I bought a new calendar book. Haven't had one for 35 years. I've been electronic, but I'm going back to paper.
Oh.
I'm going back to paper. I don't know. But anyway, so right now, a lot of my stuff's in that instead of electronic. So trying to get away from the electronic and go back to that. And I can sketch note in it. I can do my mind maps in it. And I can just have more fun with it. You can buy stickers too. I've been buying some stickers to put in it. Engagement. It's all about engagement. We got to keep ourselves engaged, right, Barb?
That's exactly right. And, Ron, it's also about the brain because, previous episodes, we've talked about some of the books I've been reading about the brain, and truly that visual representation, not word-based, but like you're describing a little picture or a little symbol that means something, is just so much quicker and easier for our brains to connect to. And somebody gave me the example once about, if you're in a building that you don't know of and there's a fire, you're not going to be reading directions about it. You're going to be looking for the icon that's like exit here or, tornado shelter, the little picture that goes along with that. So I can see how that would really work. And it probably just takes a little time, like you practiced with Ella, to kind of come up with the drawings. And so another question I have for you is, do you sort of use some symbols over and over again so that it always means the same thing? Or do you draw separate, depending on the content, you just come up with it that day?
It depends on the content, but exit signs are one of my favorite. And you mentioned that. Exit signs are one of my favorites. Stoplights are one of my favorite, with the red, yellow, green. I think that's the right order. Top's red.
You got it.
And things like that. Things that are universal. Things that people see and, instantly know this is something, that I might want to look at. So, you know what? It's been 10 minutes, Barb. So I think with that said, hopefully everybody learned a little bit and would want to try it. Ron's out.
Oh, Ron, I think that you ought to put an example in our show notes that maybe people can go to, an example of one of your sketch notes. That would be super cool for people to see. And we'll see if they can figure out what it is you were taking notes on. And Barb is out.
I could go through and try to find something. That's probably a pretty good idea. I'll see.
All right. All right. Barb's
Ron's
out. See you next time.
YouTube, please subscribe. Like, comment, and share.